Welcome to the Victory Podcast.
Hey, Victors. Welcome to this episode of The Victory Show. If this is the first time you're joining us, I'm Travis Cody, best-selling author of 16 books and the creator of Bestseller by Design, where I've had the privilege of helping hundreds of business consultants, founders, and entrepreneurs write and publish their own best-selling books. And along that journey, I discovered a really fascinating pattern. A lot of businesses are hitting revenue plateaus, usually around $1 million, and they're struggling to break through it. So on this show, I sit down with some of the world's most successful founders, CEOs, leaders, and business owners to uncover the strategies they use to overcome those plateaus and scale their businesses to new heights so that you can do the same thing. So get ready for some deep insights and actionable takeaways that you can implement in your life and business starting now. Today's guest is a startup advisor, a product strategist, and the tech CEO with deep experience building and scaling cutting-edge applications. Vadim is the CEO of Diffco and an advisor at Alchemist Accelerator and numerous startups, helping founders grow faster, smarter, and more secure. With a background in AI-enhanced applications, cybersecurity, and product development, Vadim brings a powerful mix of technical insight and real-world execution to everything he touches. He's also a sought-after speaker and expert in the startup ecosystem. And when he's not helping companies scale, you might just find him in the skies living out his passion for aviation. Vadim, thank you so much for being here.
I'm excited to be here. And followed with this intro, I was like, hey, I actually did all these things in my life. Yeah, really? Yeah, it's a lot
I
of fun.
sound pretty good. This is all right.
It's like, it's fun.
I was going to start this whole interview one thing, but I realized like I want to have a discussion about what are the principles of aviation that also align perfectly with business.
Oh man,
I put you on the spot. I threw a question at you we didn't discuss. I'm going in a whole different direction here now.
Yeah. So let me try to play this. I think in aviation, it's slightly different than business, and because aviation is all about following the rules and understanding your limits. And business is always about breaking the limits and testing new things and iterating.
And making the rules up as you go along.
Yeah, you don't want to break so many things in aviation until you go to maybe experimental things, etc. Like for the general purpose aviation, commercial aviation, etc. You don't want to break things. You want to just make a smooth transition from one destination to another. So it is simple. I think one thing that really a good executed innovation is a lot of checklists. And this is what, again, I'm a big fan of for our development approach, and just having, again, the right checklist for things and ensuring that, hey, can we test this just like quickly? Here's like 15 items, just go one by one. We did this, we did this. Because in reality, people will make mistakes. So this is like the nature of human beings. We will make mistakes. So how to avoid this? Have the things written down and actually go from each item to another one and just to check if it's actually was done correctly. So I think this is the key, and this is how you can manage this and use the aviation there to make it work.
I love the idea of checklists. So what are some of the ways you use checklists in the business? So you said product management, but is there like a specific, is that because you've processed this out so much now, you know that if we do these 6 things in a row, we're going to get a fairly, similar result?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So again, it is things that doesn't allow you to have a predefined process. And in a lot of cases, you can have a predefined process and you can have the clear understanding on what is needed to manage the execution properly. So again, project management, any deployment schemas, etc., all those technical things is pretty much standardized. And again, sometimes you will skip them. Sometimes you're like, hey, we don't have this item on the list, we'll just skip this. But it is really crucial to say, and just like when you're skipping this and do this intentionally versus like, hey, we forgot to do this. Because in some cases, you will need to do this step. And in some cases, you would not go through this process.
Yeah, makes sense.
Some projects, for example, will require more like a security compliance and some oversight on things and could not be done by the same team, by the same folks that doing the deployment. Again, in some cases, it's not true because it's a really simple project and it doesn't have the budget or it doesn't have these needs. So great. Again, we can skip this, but this is intentional decision to skip versus, hey, let's forget about this. So I think the structure is important for the operation, but not specifically for a creative part of the business.
Yeah, I love it. So let's go back. So today you're the CEO of a thriving company. going back when you were in college, was that your goal? Did you ever think you would be the CEO?
I had these ideas, just to be clear, but I don't think I imagined this as such a long journey. I always love the joke that where like when the employee think that, hey, I will be a boss someday and I will work less, and when they become a boss, they like, oh, now I basically work 24/7. And you're like, yeah, this is most likely true, and it's not the case that you can actually relax and enjoy the time for being able
Always another fire to put out.
yeah, and like you get used to this, and this is your way of living. But the difference in my perspective, like 20 years ago or more, was about like, hey, yeah, I will probably build something and I will have a team that doing everything, and I would be just again enjoying my life. I had this idea.
Mai Tais at the beach.
Yeah, in reality, again, I quickly realized that this is not true. And I also realized that it would be really boring for me to just lay down on a beach. I literally cannot do this. It's just like doesn't really work for me. So again, I love doing what I'm doing, and I love to execute and experiment with things.
I love it. So with your advisory work where you're working with founders specifically, do you have this conversation with them where they're like, I'm going to do the thing, and he's like, let me give you some reality of what's coming?
This is a tough one. So yes, so I definitely have this vision, and especially like with the early stage folks that transition into more like a founder role. I think this is the key execution there that I would have, and have a conversation with them. Hey, it will be complex. It will require you to do a lot of work. It will be required that you spend a lot of time doing things that you think that would be done by someone else. And in reality, you just need to do this. And especially when you start in the business, any startup, you basically chief everything officer, not chief executive officer. And this is true for a long period of time. And many people like, yeah, I will go to Series A, Series B, and now I will not be chief everything officer. Like I had one startup recently that Series B or so, and like I saw their CEO fixing a door in the office. I was like, come on, like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I mean, I can do this in like 15 minutes, and I can call a contractor, which will take another day to show up, but I need this door working. So he just took the instrument and fixed this. And this, I think, like makes total sense. Again, it's not complicated if you know what you do there. And again, for someone, it would be much more complex task for sure. But I'm just saying, this is the mentality of like not thinking like, oh, it's above my pay grade, blah, blah, blah. No, you will do everything. Like this is the hard truth about the startups and business in general.
So do you find that sometimes that then will create bad habits for them because they get used to doing everything, and then they have a hard time of letting go of everything as they start to grow?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think this is the question of mentality. And again, I just had a recently conversation with one amazing founder that was asking my advice about like hiring a technical co-founder position. We talked about like, hey, you can hire a good person to start, like until you maybe 25 folks in a company. This is one type of the person that you need. And he's a completely different person scaling from 25 to 100. And it is completely different person scaling to a couple of thousand people or more. It is different mindset, it's different experience, and in many cases it doesn't really mix up. And it's really hard to find a person that can grow from zero, not to one, again, growing from one to these hundreds or thousands. It is different experience, and it is really hard to have those folks that even willing to do so.
Well, is it so in that case then you've got a CEO that says gets to 25, 30. What's the recommendation then for them when you're like, hey, we need to scale to 100 and you don't have the skill set to do that? Is that will you bring in a co-CEO? Is that an operations thing? Or is that something where you're going, you know what, your time as CEO is over. We're going to put you in this other department because that's what you're good at. And we're going to bring in somebody else.
I think 25 is early for this type of decisions. Typically you will have those decisions made slightly later. And I had many cases when people started as CEO and when company grew to like 500 people plus, they had a professional management there. And again, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Again, depends. And again, I do have a lot of questions for professional management because again, for example, Google would not be Google without the CEO there because Sergey and Larry was not able to do this job, just to be clear. Again, Google is Google right now because of Eric Schmidt, not because of Sergey and Larry. They would be much smaller again. They would probably not survive there. Again, Eric Schmidt did all the heavy lifting. Again, probably most people will correct me in some things, and I was not a part of this company. I don't know the whole story, but this is the outside vision. And in many cases, what you will have is the team. So you need a team that can scale at some point. But the core question is, can you scale well enough? And again, ability to move you to a different role is, again, good. I think sometimes it is a question of just learning. And again, it's fine to learn. Again, I don't have a problem with people learning. I have a problem with people telling, hey, I know everything, you don't know anything. This approach doesn't really work.
No, that happens in business.
Oh, man. I have a company right now. I would not name but them, but the point is, one person asked me about like the feedback about them, and I asked around. And the core problem why they're not growing, by the way, they like Series B folks, is actually arrogance of the CEO. And like CEO and plus again, founding team, that they just cannot get this control from their hand, that micromanaging everything. And they afraid to hire a person that's smarter than them.
Do you find that to be a younger founder problem, or is that a founder problem of all age groups?
I think it's a personality problem. Again, in those cases, folks is, I think, around 40s.
Okay, so yeah, so it's typical Gen Z. You'd think by 40 they would have figured it out by now.
Yeah, but again, I don't think it's a problem of specific age group or anything of this nature. I think that this is just like a feedback loop. Sometimes you just need to be hit harder to be able to change. And again, I mean, the point is, if things that you're doing is working, it doesn't really matter. Again, Steve Jobs was not a great person in many ways, and many people will hate him for doing things that he done. But same as like Elon Musk. Many people would praise Elon Musk, and many people will hate him. Not talking about any politics stuff.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the companies that
Sure.
he run.
Well, to your point, I've heard multiple people say that Steve Jobs would have never been able to accomplish what he did if he wouldn't have had Tim Cook. Fantastic at visioning, and Tim Cook was actually really good at getting stuff built and done. So it's sort of like Google, that they had the vision, but Eric Schmidt was the one that was able to take that vision and put it into reality. And
Absolutely
I think, and so, like when you're doing in your consulting, is there anything you do with your leaders and founders to help them kind of understand what their skill set, what they're good at, and what they're not good at, so that they can sort of avoid these? Or is it that more of like a one-on-one sort of private conversation you're having with them?
It is a hard conversation to have, because you want to slightly arrogant CEO still.
Slightly.
Yeah, again, they need to know where they're going. And they need to be confident, and they need to do things that they believe is right. The problem is, again, you really need to understand what you're doing good or you're doing bad. And for some folks, it's basically mean, hey, we can do the product development correctly, and they're really good product folks, for example. Great, love this. Some cases, they not so great with product, but they good with sales. Okay, do this, help with this. And in many cases, they would try to also have a different hats and be, for example, a CFO. And in many cases, they fail here. Or sometimes they cannot do the operations properly because it's boring. Again, for many folks, it would be like, oh, no, I cannot do this because I cannot sit here. It's like, okay, hire a person that can. And again, the worst thing that you can do is try to do things that you believe is you capable of doing and you're terrible at it. Like, as example, I can do finances. I love finances. I cannot do accounting. Again, don't get me wrong. It is impossible for me to do accounting. I will be like absolutely, I'm not like the most terrible person there, but like I would probably do everything else in my life before I will start doing this. Again, this is just like how I'm doing things. Again, I cannot do this properly. And I know a lot of wonderful people that can do this stuff properly. And this is just like their way of life. This is what they're capable of doing. And I admire them. I'm just saying, hey guys, you can do things that I cannot. Like I literally cannot concentrate on like hundreds of different transactions and doing credit and debit and understanding where things are. Like, no, it's like I would be dying there. And they do this all day long, which is amazing for me. So again, I'm hiring folks that can do this for these positions, and I can execute on things that I'm good at. So I think this is the key for the startup founders and for any executive. Just know what you actually can do best. And again, I'm not saying that this is static. It shouldn't be static. You should learn. Again, in some cases, you should not think that, hey, I need to learn everything again. Probably accounting is not something that you should learn unless, again, you're doing an accounting startup. If you do a startup for accounting, SaaS tool, some financial tool, etc., maybe this is something that you should learn.
I love it. Yeah, I had somebody on the show, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, and he's a consultant that helps scale an exit, and they've done 70 exits now at this point. And he was talking about the biggest sort of roadblock to a lot of companies scaling is like founders doing things that are not really good at instead of and he's like, when he goes into companies, the first thing they do is they're like, what are the things you suck at but you're trying to do because you feel like, oh, I got to work on my weaknesses and get better on this because I got to do everything. He's like, no, like you suck at that, like hire somebody and get rid of it off of your plate ASAP. Like don't wait, do it now. And I see that with people, and I think maybe partly it's an American culture thing of like, oh, we're supposed to be well-rounded and be able to do everything because I'm the guy in charge. I need to know every job. But the reality is like eventually you're going to get to a point where that's just not feasible, right? So
yeah. Again, I think you should know every job on some level.
Sure.
But you need to manage your experience and what you're good at. Because if you're good at sales, for example, and you try to do all operational stuff in the same time, great. But you can close like another 10 deals in the same time while you try to do this operational stuff. It's like, it doesn't really make sense for the business perspective. So just, again, and sometimes you would be like, hey, I don't have the things that I'm good at. I was like, okay, it's just make a decision what you would do there and learn. Because again, like the worst advice that people can is like follow your passion, the total thing that doesn't really make sense. Again, you create your passion. You create things that you're good at. Again, we all born with almost equal opportunities. Again, if we remove any kind of disabilities, etc., we can learn anything. And especially nowadays, like you can literally learn anything and almost for free. Or in most cases for free. Again, you may not get the degree from some university for free, but in the same time, it's not really required. And especially with age of AI, I don't think it will be in any value, by the way, in 10 years. I still question this. Does it really make sense? So I think this is the just angle that you need to have as a leader.
So a minute ago, you're talking about, having a company that's gone from 25 to 100 employees to 1,000 employees. What are from a business perspective and a leadership perspective, what are the challenges that you've got to deal with from, say, go from 25 to 100 and then, secondly, once you get to 100, scaling to 500? Because I when I talk to people, a lot of them think, oh, when I get to XYZ revenue, then everything's going to be easier. But the reality is like you've just created a whole new set of problems that you're not even aware of right now, right? So for people that are like, I want to scale, I want to get to the 100 employee, what are sort of the disadvantages to actually getting that big, and what are the challenges to get there?
You're really asking the right directions for the questions. I really like it. So I think like the core challenge that you have is understand that you need to set up structure differently. And again, it is
my co-host decided to join us.
The best co-host ever.
She's bringing the good questions now. You're in trouble now. She's going to ask the hard ones.
It's like, I have a box for her.
On my desk, I got a little bed. That's where she's at. She's like, time for my nap.
I see.
Good timing.
So coming back to the question. So I think that the core competence there that you would need to really understand what is actual structure that you want to set up, how many direct reports you want to have, and it is a long conversation about this. And for example, again, Jason from Media is saying, hey, we need to, and he had like 50 or 60 direct reports, if I remember correctly, which is like totally crazy. But in the same time, the best stock performing asset ever lived, again, like no question asked. And the most important company of the century for sure. So again, I think it's like makes sense to consider different practices and sometimes just diving deeper into things and being able to change. Again, not like sticking to one policy, and because things will change, you will grow. And again, I think that the core question is to hire people that's smarter than you on things that you would do. Because again, it is kind of counterintuitive to say, but in many cases, it's really hard for people to hire those folks because they doesn't really have a clearance like, it's not a good fit, not a good fit. It is a great fit. The problem is they're afraid.
They don't want to be acknowledged as not being the smartest person in the room.
And again, I think like the best thing that founders can do is say, hey, I'm not the smartest person here. Yes, I brought this company to X level, and now I want to have your perspective on how should things be run. Again, I will still have the final say, etc. But again, tell me what the direction are and explain me. And I think this is the key component, because in many cases you will not know how to do things. And especially like if you never dealt with enterprise deployments, for example, or like enterprise sales before, you're like, hey, again, explain me how these things work and create a structure that will do the job. Again, I would like to understand why this structure. I would like to understand how this working. And I would try to probably be annoying and to try to optimize things here and there sometimes. And again, it's fine to tell me like, again, it is stupid that what you're suggesting because of X, Y, and Z. And this is the best thing. And this is the best culture that I think you can have. Like when some regular employee can tell you like, hey, what you're doing is completely damn, and you should be doing this versus this. And again, as example, like the Sergey Brin is coming back to Google right now. And he was on recent interview in Miami. And he told the wonderful thing that like, hey, he started doing some commits to the code, etc., partially. And it was a joke about like, hey, do you think that you will have some comments about that what you're doing is dumb? It's like, yeah, I want to. And this is the best approach. This is the best attitude that you can have. Because in this case, you open to feedback. Even the folks that like just maybe regular developer there, not afraid to tell you, this is probably should be done this way versus this way. And again, feel free to explain. And again, if you're willing to accept this, this is where your company will be succeeding. So really damn simple.
Why do we make it so complicated? All right. So we had a conversation before we got started here about, the power of innovation. So can you talk a little bit about why innovation is actually the most important thing that businesses actually can do versus all the other sometimes seems like nonsense that they think they should be doing?
I think the core point is not only innovation, it is experimenting. And I call it experimenting. In reality, it's a lot of things that mean experimenting there. But the core, I think, meaning is being able to get something as quickly as you can and just run as many experiments as you can. And double down on things that work. Because the truth is not the smartest person wins in business. And this is maybe kind of like will upset a lot of people. But again, the people that iterate fast will win. Because if you're smart enough, you will think and like say, yeah, it will probably not work. And I will think another 3 months to make something better. And some other folks will be just doing 20 different experiments at the same time. Half of them is dumb, but one will win. And they will double down there and they will grow. Again, many people would be like, oh, again, wasting your time, etc. But in reality, if you can run those things fast, and if you can iterate fast enough to get the feedback and talk to your clients, understand what is going on, especially for B2B SaaS, any B2B business in general, I think this is where you will get the most efficient success rate. Because if you just thinking through but not executing, you're wasting a lot of time.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, right? Thinking versus executing. And you can get caught up in like, okay, well, we need the analysis and we need this and we need to do projections before we can do it instead of just going. So I'm working with a client right now. He's on his book and it's called Fail Hard, Win Big. And the subtitle is 30 Ventures, 20 Failures, 10 Wins. And he talks about over his career, he's started 30 different businesses, 20 of which he's like, oh, it just fell flat on my face. But 10 of them succeeded really, really well, right? But if he didn't have the ability to start businesses and grow them and get them going really quickly, he would have never figured out what was the one that things for him that worked, right? Now, I know that's a little bit different than innovating and inside of a business, but just that's what kind of comes to mind with the fact that, he was moving fast. And so, and I think also what you said there was important, right? There's one company that's going to test 20 things and, 12 of them just may fail. Right. I've noticed in the people that I've worked with is that like even with something as simple as a book, they just get hung up on tweaking it forever because they're like, oh, what if I put this out and there's a typo in it and I'll get embarrassed, right? Or it's just like, yeah, but we're not going to know what works until we get stuff that's out there, and then you can adjust as you go.
I think like this is true in life a lot because like again, like if I would not be trying multiple things, I would be just again like having like again I would be stuck in the past. Again, you cannot grow unless you fail. And again, failing is good. I mean, same as like when people tell you no in sales, it basically means, hey, now I have like a 100 different options how we can lead this conversation. Because if you give me yes, it is boring because now I'm like, okay, let's just do this. But if it's no, it's a lot of fun because you have like no why, no here, why, etc. So you can understand the actual pain points. And sometimes it's much, much more helpful. And like in executing any kind of the angle in direction of like bringing the value to the customer and understanding what their actual pain point are, it is sometimes, I mean, in many cases, they would not know. And the only thing that you would be able to do to execute there is actually to have a different perspective and just sometimes show them this. And again, nowadays it's simpler than ever. You can build some prototypes with no codes, with AI.
Yeah.
It's like 10 different options that you can do literally today and show this to your customer tomorrow. And when you like, yeah, but I need this, this, and this, I was like, yeah, but like if you're not trying to do this, at least on some level, you already failed. Because the truth is, many people would do this. And again, I have a wonderful example of the folks that one startup that we worked with. They started as a self-funded. They got some funds from the family, friends, etc., and built a really simple product. Again, the product started working, and they did a lot of bootstrapping in terms of the marketing efforts, in terms of product efforts, and they pushed a lot of things to make sense there. And in 2 years, they got acquired because other company decided that it's much faster than to buy those guys versus, again, try to build this. Again, under the 100 mil exit, but come on, it's 2 years.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
And you can do this. And again, those guys was like first-time founders, but they was not sitting around and waiting like what the best solution. They executed. They tested things. They failed so many times. They shipped broken products many, many times. And they did a lot of things manually, which, again, they got some negative feedback. It doesn't really work, blah, blah, blah. Come on, doesn't really matter. As long as you keep pushing this and you fix it, etc. Again, obviously, it is limits to this, but the point is, this limit is much higher than you think. In the same time, I had another funny story about folks that told me like, hey, we're not ready to launch because, again, it's not perfect. It's have some bugs, and this technology will need to work only if it will be 100% execution. And we're talking about AI specifically. They decided not to do this. Half a year later, another competitor show up with worse technology that they had. They grow, they raise some funds, and a year later, they was bought by a large company. And you're like, come on, really? Again, the difference is only one. They was not afraid to launch not perfect thing. Again,
yeah,
it's simple as this.
Yeah, that's probably the best advice that I think you could give, right? Don't be afraid to launch an imperfect thing. So if somebody's listening to this, or they're reading this chapter in the book and they want to get involved in what they're doing, or they want to kind of follow, or how do people find you? How do they get involved with what you guys have got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the company, you can just find us at Diffco.es and just Google for Diffco. For me personally, again, you can find me on LinkedIn, Vadim Peskov there, or Twitter, X. So this is the best way to contact. So it's if you have any startups that you are doing in AI and cybersecurity and you're looking for some mentorships or advisory or investment, feel free to reach out. So this is how I can help.
I love it. So final question for you is, what excites you most with AI for over this next 5 years?
Next 5 years.
Where do you think it's going?
What excites me? I think the next wave of AI products will be doing things slightly differently, because now we telling AI what to do. And I think the next wave of AI product would be actually telling us what to do. So let me make an example there. Let's say you want to achieve something in life. You want to become, you want to lose weight, or you want to like eat healthy, etc. So AI can actually be proactive into things and telling you like, hey, if you want to lose weight and half a pound this week, you need to reduce these products. And I see that you bought another set of chips.
So we like have AI like monitoring our bank accounts so that when it sees us buying, it's like, hey, you said you want to lose weight, and that is not going to help you reach your goal.
Yeah. And again, the point is, I think it can navigate you to your goals and be your assistant in life, knowing things that you just sometimes afraid to tell yourself. I think this is one of the differences that we will have. So being proactive, and really like replacing many things that we get used to doing today. And I don't think we will need to do the same things tomorrow. Again, I think interface will change and how we execute on things will change.
Yeah.
And again, 5 years ago, 5 years ahead is forever away. I don't think we'll still have AGI, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's and to that point, I've been playing around with AI, and I was just testing something out, and I thought, okay, look, I'm a guy, I'm a writer. I sit at my computer, I've gained a little weight. I'm like, I need to lose weight. I'm like, not in my 20s anymore. So I just got on chat and was like, hey, I'm a this old male. Here's my health issues. This is what I want to do. This is where I want to get to. What do you recommend? And it gave me the most detailed, like, okay, you need to stop doing this and you need to start doing this. Now, it made me laugh because when I was working in Hollywood, I hired a trainer and he charged me $5,000 for 3 months. And what he put together was not as detailed as what AI did for me for free in 5 minutes. Because I actually pulled out the old plans and was looking at them, and it was just like, up to that point, I had primarily looked at AI as like, oh, AI is a business thing, it's a marketing tool, it's a content piece. And that's when I was like,
already know it.
yep, there's way more uses to this than I think most people are realizing.
And especially with deep research functions from OpenAI and Anthropic, and as well as Gemini, I think those models are absolutely amazing. Again, those things is doing research that is impossible for me as a human to do. Or sometimes, again, it will take me forever, like 2 weeks to do the same thing that I literally can do within 30 minutes with deep research products there. And it's allowing me to be like, again, it's allowing me to dive into things that I would never be a part of. Like, I need to have a team of like 20 people executing this, and it still will take a week, etc. Versus me just asking multimodal questions and navigating through this process. I think this is the key component, and it's really challenging not to use this anymore. I think I get addicted to using this and to quality of output, and I would be like, how we did things like 5 years ago. Like, do we really like just search in Google?
Remember when you were in college and to like find something, you had to go to the library and dig through books because you couldn't find it on the internet because it hadn't been digitized yet?
Yeah, I remember those days. It was a lot of fun.
Well, Vadim, thank you so much for your time. This has been fantastic. I love our conversation, and thanks for taking time out of your day.
Absolutely. Love this. Thanks for inviting.
You're welcome.